ever get stuck in one of those conversations?
Yeah.
Where it's
Yeah.
like, what planet are you living on? Like
Yeah.
you're speaking two totally different
It
languages.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, we're tackling that feeling head on.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into personalities, what makes people tick, what makes them tick us off, all that good stuff.
I love it.
But here's the twist. We're also going to dig into this whole idea of independence. Like, are our choices really our choices? Or is there a whole lot of other stuff secretly calling the shots?
Yeah.
Buckle up, because this is going to get interesting. We're pulling excerpts from this book. Surrounded by Idiots. Catchy title, right?
Right.
It's by Thomas Erikson. And before anyone gets offended, he's not actually calling everyone idiots.
No, not at all.
It's more like a playful way to say, hey, we all have these moments where we act in ways that baffle everyone else.
It's true. And the book really gets at the why behind those moments. It's because people are different.
Okay. Different how?
We think differently. We communicate differently. We look at the world through completely different lenses.
And that's where this DISC model comes in.
Right. It's red, yellow, green, blue, almost like a personality decoder ring.
Oh, I love a good decoder ring.
Yeah.
So break it down for us. Who are these idiots we deal with daily, and how do we make it out alive?
Okay, so first up, we've got your reds. Imagine like a human bulldozer. Decisive, action-oriented. They've always got that to-do list going. Actually, they've probably got a to-do list FOR, their to-do list.
Sounds efficient, but maybe a tad intense.
Maybe a tad. Reds are all about results, which means they can be, well, a bit impatient.
Okay, so how do we not get steamrolled in the process?
You got to speak their language. Emphasize efficiency. Focus on the outcome. Don't beat around the bush. Just get to the point.
Noted. Don't come at a red with a problem unless you've got a solution ready to roll.
Exactly.
All right, who's next in our lineup of colorful characters?
Okay, next up, we've got the yellows. These are your social butterflies. Think big picture, super enthusiastic, always bursting with energy.
Those sound fun.
They are. But here's the thing, yellows, they can't stand boredom or negativity. Give them excitement, give them positivity.
Otherwise,
Otherwise, they're out. And
Yeah.
because they're so busy buzzing around, they might miss a few details here and there.
I've met those types.
They might even forget your name 5 minutes after you've just met.
It's happened to the best of us.
Right, but don't take it personally. They don't mean it. It's just that fear of boredom kicking in.
So how do we wrangle that yellow energy? How do we actually get work done?
You got to make it FUN. Keep them engaged, throw in some novelty, and hey, don't be afraid to gently nudge them back on track if they go off on a tangent.
Because you know they will go off on a tangent.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to happen. But those tangents, sometimes they lead to unexpected brilliance.
Right, I'm sold. Give me all the yellows, as long as they come with an off switch.
Right.
No.
Okay, moving on to our next color, green. If reds are bulldozers and yellows are butterflies, then greens. Greens are like that big comfy hammock you relax in.
Okay, I like them already.
They're your steady rock, reliable, empathetic, always down to listen. They just want everyone to get along.
Don't we all? But come on, spill the tea. What's the downside?
Well, remember how yellows hate boredom? Greens, they're terrified of conflict, like really terrified. Ah, so that's why they have a hard time saying no.
Bingo. They'd rather bend over backwards than rock the boat.
So how do we work with that? How do we collaborate without stressing them out?
Keep it chill, emphasize teamwork, show them how their input creates that harmonious vibe they crave.
Gotcha. No pressure, just vibes, and maybe a comfortable silence or two.
Exactly. Now, this actually makes me think about how different personalities might see this whole independence thing differently.
Oh, tell me more.
Like, would a red define independence as being in control, calling the shots, while a green might see it as having that stable routine, knowing where they stand?
It's true. Their idea of freedom is probably very different.
This is making me rethink my entire social circle.
It's all connected. But hold on, we've got one more color to cover. Blue. And this is where things get precise. Blues are like those detectives who notice every single clue. Details. They're all about the details.
That's me. Okay, maybe sometimes. What's the catch with these detail-oriented folks?
Remember how greens are terrified of conflict? Blues. Their biggest fear is making a mistake.
So while a red is jumping headfirst into a project,
A blue is organizing their desk, making color-coded labels for every single folder.
I feel seen. But hey, there's value in that, right?
Huge value. That meticulousness. It's because they genuinely want the best possible outcome.
Okay, that makes sense. So patience is key when you're dealing with a blue. Don't expect any snap judgments.
Exactly. Data, evidence, a well-reasoned argument, that's how you win a blue over. Leave the emotional appeals at home.
Logic reigns supreme. This is amazing. I'm already starting to see those everyday clashes in a whole new light.
Right. Understanding these different approaches can be a game changer. But it all circles back to that big question we started with. How much of our behavior is truly independent, and how much is driven by these personality traits that are, let's be honest, baked in from the start?
Okay, yeah. So we've got these reds who crave control, yellows who need stimulation, greens who value harmony, blues who need accuracy. Are those things driving the bus even when we think we're making independent choices?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, when we start digging into the nitty-gritty of what independence really means, it gets even more complicated.
More complicated. Don't leave me hanging.
Think about it. You shared some really fascinating material on this, talking about stochastic independence and causal non-influence.
Those are some big words. Care to break those down for us non-philosophers?
Yeah. Of course. Imagine flipping a coin. Heads, tails, heads, tails. Each flip. Totally random. That's what we call stochastically independent. One result doesn't affect the next. It's pure chance. But life's not a coin toss.
You got that right.
So let's say you decided to have cereal for breakfast this morning.
Delicious and nutritious.
But was that decision truly independent? Or was it influenced by what you happened to have in your pantry, how much time you had, maybe even what you were craving at that moment?
Okay, yeah, fair point. A million factors go into even the simplest decisions.
And those factors, the contents of your pantry, your time constraints, even your cravings, those are all influenced by previous choices, circumstances, things outside your control. Suddenly, that bowl of cereal, not so independent anymore.
Mind blown. So you're saying even those small everyday choices are part of this giant web of cause and effect.
Exactly. And it gets really interesting when you start thinking about the bigger decisions in life. Career choices, relationships, where you choose to live, those might feel independent, but
Well,
but they're also shaped by a whole bunch of factors, right? Your upbringing, your cultural background, past experiences, they all leave their mark. They shape your values, your beliefs, and ultimately your choices.
so how much of what we call independence is really just us playing out these scripts that were written by someone else?
Now that is the question, isn't it? And it's something to really ponder as we keep going with this whole independence deep dive, because once you start seeing those hidden connections, it changes how you look at everything.
Okay, now my head is officially spinning. So, if our personalities influence our choices, and those choices are shaped by a million external factors, where does that leave us?
Right.
Are we all just puppets dancing to a tune we can't even hear?
That's where things get really, really interesting. Because while it's true that our choices might not be completely independent, that doesn't mean we're powerless.
Wait, really? There's
Well,
hope.
oh, absolutely. Because even if we're not starting from scratch, we've got this amazing ability, self-awareness. We can reflect, we can make conscious choices that break free from those pre-programmed patterns.
So it's not about denying the influence of those external factors. It's about seeing them for what they are and then
Yeah.
deciding how we want to respond.
Exactly. And that is where true independence comes in. It's not something we're born with. It's something we cultivate.
Yeah.
Through self-awareness, through deliberate action.
So it's less about being independent and more about becoming independent, constantly questioning those ingrained beliefs and patterns.
You got it. And that's why understanding those different types of independence is so important. When we recognize how our thinking is shaped by things outside our control, whether it's those DIC personality traits, our upbringing, even just the stuff we read online, we can start to break free.
This is blowing my mind. We've gone from these four colors, these personality types, to this whole philosophical exploration of what it means to be independent in a world where, let's be honest, nothing's truly independent.
It's all connected. And the more we explore those connections, the more we question our assumptions, the better equipped we are to navigate the world, right? With more understanding, more empathy.
And maybe even more freedom.
Exactly. Freedom to choose who we want to be rather than just accepting the scripts we've been handed.
Okay, I am so ready to dive even deeper into this.
Well, get ready because it gets even more nuanced when we start looking at the philosophical side of things.
So we've gone from these distinct DISC personality types to realizing that our everyday choices might not be as independent as we think. Where does the philosophy part come in?
It's almost like we've been talking about independence as an action, like those everyday choices we make, but we also use it to describe a kind of person, right? Someone who's independent. But what does that even mean if, like we've been saying, we're all shaped by all these external factors?
It's like that classic nature versus nurture debate. How much of who we are is already decided for us, and how much is shaped by what we experience?
Oh,
And when we apply that to independence, things get really interesting. Let's say someone grows up in a super restrictive environment. Does their desire to break free, to be independent, does that come from within? Or is it a reaction to those external constraints, you know?
It's like that saying, the rules are there to show us where we can break them. But then is that truly independent thinking, or are we still being influenced by the very rules we're rebelling against?
Right. It's a real head scratcher. And it gets even more complex when we bring in this idea of free will. If our actions are shaped by these unconscious biases, past experiences, all these invisible forces, are we really the ones making the
Okay, now
choices?
my head is really spinning. Because if we're all just products of our environments, acting out these scripts we didn't write, what's the point of trying to change or improve ourselves?
But that's assuming we are just products of our environment,
Right.
right? And that's where things get hopeful. Because even if we're not starting with a totally blank slate, we still have this incredible capacity for self-awareness, for reflection, for making deliberate choices that break away from those pre-programmed
Yeah.
patterns.
So it's not about pretending those external factors don't exist. It's about seeing them clearly and then deciding how we want to respond.
Yes, exactly. And that is where true independence comes in. Not as something we're just born with, but as a muscle we develop through self-awareness, through conscious effort.
So it's less about being independent and more about becoming independent, always questioning, always pushing back against those old patterns.
You got it. And that is why understanding these different types of independence is so important, because when we see how our thinking is influenced by all these things we don't control, whether it's those DIC personality traits, how we were raised, even just the stuff we read online, we can start to break free.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've gone from those four simple colors, those personality types, to this whole philosophical exploration of what it even means to be independent in a world where, let's face it, nothing's truly independent.
It's all connected. And I think the more we explore those connections, the more we question those assumptions we have about why we act the way we do, the more equipped we are to actually navigate the world,
Mhm.
with more understanding, more empathy.
And maybe even more freedom.
Exactly. The freedom to choose who we want to be, rather than just accepting the scripts we've been handed.
I love that. Freedom through awareness. And isn't that what this deep dive is all about? Giving our listeners the tools to think critically, challenge their own assumptions, and approach life with this more informed, more nuanced perspective.
Absolutely. Because when we start to question those things we take for granted, those idiotic behaviors we see in other people, even in ourselves, it opens up a whole world of possibilities
Yeah.
for deeper connection, for greater understanding.
This has given me so much to think about, and I have a feeling our listeners are feeling the same way. So until next time, keep those aha moments coming, keep questioning everything, and never underestimate the power of understanding those hidden forces that shape our thoughts, our choices, our entire experience.